Last summer, Esther was facing down a perfect storm of marital stresses. In addition to a recent death in the family, a move, and the grind of daily life with small children, she was struggling with her husband's addiction issues. All this on top of the overall sense of disconnection that had long been plaguing them. She says, "It was more than 5 years of feeling hopeless about our future." Esther, who requested that her last name be withheld for privacy, had finally reached her breaking point. Couples therapy seemed like a waste of time and money. It might drag on for months or years, and she balked at the idea of staying together for that long. Esther was desperate to escape the unhappiness of her marriage, but her husband was equally desperate to salvage family life for their 2 kids. Stuck at a crossroads, the 2 of them turned to discernment counseling, a relatively niche and short-term type of therapy that helps couples decide whether to try to make it work. Discernment counseling is not couples counseling. It doesn't aim to fix any problems. Instead, in just a handful of sessions, both joint and individual, it helps couples on the verge of relationship breakdown understand why their problems have become so intractable, helping them trace the downward spiral and examine their patterns from a different perspective. In a sense, it's an exit interview for a relationship, but one that leaves the door open to reconciliation. Rachel Zamore, a discernment counselor in Vermont, says about half of her clients decide to stay together and transition into more traditional therapy. Some have even backed out of divorces. Many couples have been unhappy for a long time, and then they finally realize that they can just leave, she says. But they haven't really done any work to address the problems in the relationship in any meaningful way. In her role, Zamore says she coaxes couples out of fight or flight mode and into a headspace where they can chart their next move with care. This helps people slow down the speeding train, she says, and make a decision that feels really in line with their integrity and not their desperation. Most of the couples who sign on for discernment counseling are mixed agenda, meaning one is eager to walk and the other wants to make things work, like Esther and her husband. By the time someone comes to me, they're in a pretty polarized position with really fixed ideas about how the problems in the relationship are caused by the other person, Zamore says. They don't have an understanding of, oh, it makes sense that my partner withdraws because they perceive me as critical and demanding. Once you make sense of it, you can say, what would it take to make this better? And can I find the motivation to work on it? Finding that motivation can be particularly difficult if you're hemming and hawing about whether to leave, a surprisingly common phenomenon. A 2017 study from the University of Utah found that nearly half of people in committed partnerships experience relationship ambivalence, the sometimes agonizing process of feeling uncertain about a romantic partner even while going through the daily motions of a relationship. Natalia Juarez, a breakup coach in Toronto, says discernment counseling is becoming an increasingly large part of her business, with more and more clients coming to her not because they want help navigating a breakup, but because they're uncertain about whether they want one. Juarez considers her work as a form of insurance for her clients. There's a lot of fear about ending a relationship if it's not for the right reasons, she says. They really want to avoid regretting the breakup. To help couples figure out whether their relationship is worth repairing, Juarez takes them through what she calls the 6 relationship C's: commitment, communication, connection, character, compatibility, and circumstances. She says that some things, like communication, can improve if both partners are willing to make the effort, but other things are harder to fix. At a certain point, if someone's unhappy, you have to help someone examine why they want to stay in the relationship, Juarez says. Maybe they'll find the answer, or maybe they'll conclude that they shouldn't stay at all. With either conclusion, the mark of successful discernment counseling is when couples can step outside themselves to view the relationship and its dissolution more objectively. Some research suggests that couples struggle with relationship difficulties for an average of 6 years before seeking help. When you're nursing a deepening hurt over that amount of time, it's easy to become a bit solipsistic, favoring acts of self-preservation over generosity. It's harder to see past old and recent wounds, to adopt another perspective on the problem, even when doing so might provide a solution. We confuse feelings with the stories we make up about those feelings, Zamor says. That can bog us down in conflict to the point where it seems impossible to ever get back to a good place. With discernment counseling, she says, the bandwidth goes from this really narrow slice, which is what we get when we're in survival brain, to this whole spectrum. Zamor also encourages her clients to examine how they might have contributed to the demise of their relationship. Your partner might be driving you crazy in a million ways, but you have to ask which piece of this is yours, she says. It was through discernment counseling that Esther realized she had been emotionally checked out of her relationship for years, making a bad situation even worse. My head was swirling in anger and resentment, and we were still trying to live life, she says. These sessions were an opportunity to reflect with an impartial party. It took a lot of teasing out why I wanted to leave and whether those reasons were really so unworkable. Esther and her husband ended up agreeing to give their marriage another chance. They've been in more traditional couples counseling for a year, and she says that they now have more good days than bad. If we had gone straight to couples counseling, I think I might have been more difficult and reluctant and less committed to the process, she says. Discernment made me feel like I did my homework, regardless of the outcome.